Sometimes the most powerful acts of kindness are the ones done in complete silence, with no expectation of recognition or reward. What I'm about to tell you is a story that will restore your faith in humanity and remind you that real heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they're just people with the means and the heart to change a stranger's life forever. This is the incredible true story of how a Hollywood superstar's secret act of generosity saved a little girl's life, and how 20 years later, that little girl would move heaven and earth to find him and say the two words he never expected to hear: "Thank you." The story begins in 1994, in a small, run-down apartment in East Los Angeles, where 7-year-old Isabella Rodriguez was fighting for her life against an enemy that most children never have to face. Isabella had been born with a rare congenital heart defect called hypoplastic left heart syndrome, a condition where the left side of the heart is severely underdeveloped and unable to pump blood effectively to the body. For most children born with this condition in the early 1990s, the prognosis was grim. The surgery required to repair the defect was experimental, extremely expensive, and only performed at a handful of hospitals in the entire country. Without the surgery, children with Isabella's condition rarely lived past their 10th birthday. Isabella's mother, Carmen Rodriguez, was a single parent working 2 jobs, cleaning office buildings at night and washing dishes at a local restaurant during the day, just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Carmen's husband had left when Isabella was diagnosed, unable to cope with the stress and financial burden of having a child with such serious medical needs. "I would have sold everything I owned, worked every job in the city, done anything to save my daughter," Carmen later recalled. "But the surgery cost $250,000, and our insurance wouldn't cover it because it was considered experimental. I was a woman making minimum wage with no savings and no family who could help. It felt impossible." Carmen had spent months calling hospitals, insurance companies, and charitable organizations, desperately searching for some way to fund Isabella's surgery. She had organized bake sales, approached local churches, and even stood outside grocery stores with homemade signs asking for donations. But after months of effort, she had only managed to raise about $3,000, a fraction of what was needed. As Isabella's condition worsened and time became increasingly critical, Carmen was facing every parent's worst nightmare, watching her child die because she couldn't afford to save her. That's when something extraordinary happened. On a Friday afternoon in November 1994, Carmen received a phone call that would change everything. Dr. Michael Chen, a cardiac surgeon at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, was calling with news that seemed too good to be true. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Dr. Chen said, "I want you to bring Isabella in on Monday morning. We're going to perform her surgery." Carmen was confused. "Doctor, I appreciate your concern, but you know we can't afford the surgery. Nothing has changed with our insurance. The surgery has been paid for," Dr. Chen explained. "In full. An anonymous donor has covered all costs, the surgery, the hospital stay, the follow-up care, everything." Carmen sat down hard in her kitchen chair, unable to process what she was hearing. "I don't understand. Who would do that? Why?" "I don't know," Dr. Chen admitted. "The donation came through a law firm with very strict instructions that the donor's identity remain confidential. All I can tell you is that someone wanted to make sure Isabella got the surgery she needs." The surgery took place on November 21, 1994, and it was a complete success. Isabella spent 3 weeks in the hospital recovering, during which Carmen tried repeatedly to find out who had saved her daughter's life. The hospital staff knew nothing beyond what Dr. Chen had told her. The law firm that had handled the donation politely but firmly refused to provide any information about their client. "It was like having a guardian angel," Carmen said. "Someone out there knew about Isabella's situation and decided to help, but they didn't want any credit or recognition for it. I spent nights lying awake wondering who it could be and how I could ever thank them." As Isabella recovered and grew stronger, Carmen continued her search for their mysterious benefactor. She contacted local newspapers, hoping someone might come forward or recognize the story. She wrote letters to wealthy people in Los Angeles, thinking perhaps one of them had heard about Isabella's case. She even hired a private investigator with money she couldn't afford to spend, but every lead turned into a dead end. Years passed. Isabella grew up healthy and strong, with only a faint scar on her chest to remind her of the surgery that had saved her life. She excelled in school, played soccer, learned to play the violin, and lived the normal, active childhood that would have been impossible without the stranger's generosity. But Carmen never stopped wondering about their anonymous donor, and she made sure Isabella understood the magnitude of what someone had done for them. Every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation, I reminded Isabella that she was there because someone we'd never met had decided her life was worth saving, Carmen explained. I wanted her to understand that kindness like that is rare and precious, and that we had a responsibility to pay it forward however we could. Isabella grew up with a deep sense of gratitude and purpose. She volunteered at children's hospitals, participated in charity walks for heart disease research, and eventually decided to pursue a career in medicine, inspired by the doctors who had saved her life and the anonymous donor who had made it possible. In 2014, 20 years after her surgery, Isabella was a 27-year-old medical student at UCLA, specializing in pediatric cardiology. She had never stopped wondering about the person who had given her the chance to live, and she had never stopped hoping that someday she might be able to thank them. The breakthrough came in the most unexpected way. Isabella was researching her medical history for a genetics course when she requested detailed records from Children's Hospital Los Angeles about her surgery. Most of the documents were routine medical files she had seen before, but buried in the paperwork was a single page that had never been included in her previous records. It was a letter from the law firm that had handled the donation, and it contained a piece of information that had been accidentally included in her file, a partial account number that corresponded to the payment for her surgery. Isabella, who had inherited her mother's determination, decided to follow this lead. She contacted a friend who worked in banking and asked if there was any way to trace the account number. Her friend explained that bank records were confidential, but suggested that Isabella try a different approach. Instead of trying to find out who made the donation, her friend suggested, "Why don't you try to find out if any celebrities or wealthy individuals were publicly supporting children's heart surgery around that time? Maybe your donor was someone who was already known for that kind of charity work." Isabella spent weeks researching newspaper archives, charity records, and entertainment industry publications from 1994. She was looking for any connection between wealthy individuals and children's heart surgery funding around the time of her operation. What she found was a pattern that led her to an unexpected conclusion. In late 1994, several entertainment industry publications had reported that actor Robert Downey Jr., who was then 29 years old and already establishing himself as a major Hollywood talent, had made significant anonymous donations to various children's medical charities. The articles were vague about specifics, but they mentioned that Downey had been quietly supporting children's heart surgery programs at several Los Angeles hospitals. The timeline matched perfectly with Isabella's surgery, and the description of anonymous donations through law firms sounded exactly like what had happened in her case. But Isabella needed more proof before she could be certain. She spent months researching Robert Downey Jr.'s charitable activities, his connection to Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and any other information that might confirm her suspicions. What she discovered was a man who had been quietly using his growing wealth and influence to help children in need, often without any public recognition. In interviews from the 1990s, Downey had occasionally mentioned his belief that successful people had a responsibility to help those less fortunate, particularly children who were facing medical challenges through no fault of their own. He had also talked about his preference for anonymous giving, saying that charity should be about helping people, not about getting credit. The more Isabella learned about Robert Downey Jr.'s character and charitable philosophy, the more convinced she became that he was the anonymous donor who had saved her life. In March 2015, Isabella made a decision that would require all the courage she had inherited from her mother. She was going to find Robert Downey Jr. and thank him, even if she wasn't 100% certain he was her benefactor. Through her research, Isabella had learned that Downey was scheduled to appear at a charity event for children's medical research in Beverly Hills. She bought a ticket she couldn't afford and attended the event, hoping for a chance to speak with him. When the opportunity arose during a meet-and-greet session, Isabella approached Downey with a carefully rehearsed speech. "Mr. Downey," she began, her voice shaking with nerves. "My name is Isabella Rodriguez, and I think you might have saved my life when I was 7 years old." Downey looked at her with curiosity and confusion. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met before." "We haven't," Isabella continued. "But in 1994, someone anonymously paid for my heart surgery at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. I've spent 20 years wondering who that person was, and I have reason to believe it might have been you." For a moment, Downey's expression was unreadable. Then, quietly, he asked, "What makes you think that?" Isabella explained her research, her discovery of the partial account information, and her investigation into his charitable activities from that time period. As she spoke, she watched Downey's face carefully, looking for any sign of recognition or confirmation. When she finished, Downey was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, not the practiced celebrity smile Isabella had expected, but something warmer and more genuine. "Isabella," he said softly, "I remember your case. Your mother wrote the most heartbreaking letter to my publicist, describing your condition and asking if I knew of any charities that might help. I couldn't read that letter and not do something." Isabella felt tears welling up in her eyes. After 20 years of wondering, she finally had her answer. "I never wanted recognition for it," Downey continued. "I was just a young actor who had been fortunate enough to have some success, and here was a little girl who needed help. It seemed like the most obvious thing in the world to do." "I've wanted to thank you for 20 years, Isabella said, barely able to speak through her tears. "You gave me my life back. You gave me the chance to become a doctor, to help other children the way you helped me." Downey looked genuinely moved by her words. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Seeing you here, healthy and strong and helping other people, that's thanks enough." But Isabella wasn't finished. "There's something else I want you to know," she said. "I'm a pediatric cardiology resident now, and I'm working on a research project that could help develop less expensive treatments for children with heart defects. I want to name the research fund after you, so other families can get the help we got." Downey was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "Don't name it after me," he said. "Name it after your mother. She's the real hero in this story. She fought for you when no one else would." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, during which Downey asked Isabella about her medical training, her research, and her plans for the future. He was particularly interested in her work developing more affordable treatment options for children with heart conditions. "You know," he said as their conversation was winding down, "I think I might be able to help with your research project. Not with money, well, not just with money, but with publicity, connections, resources. If you're working to help kids like you were, then I want to be involved." What began as Isabella's quest to thank her anonymous benefactor evolved into an ongoing partnership focused on helping children with heart defects. Downey became a vocal advocate for Isabella's research and helped establish the Carmen Rodriguez Foundation for Pediatric Heart Research, named after Isabella's mother. The foundation has since funded groundbreaking research that has led to more affordable treatment options for children with congenital heart defects, helping hundreds of families who find themselves in the same impossible situation the Rodriguez family faced in 1994. Isabella's story became public when she and Downey appeared together on a talk show to promote the foundation's work. The interview went viral, inspiring millions of people with its message about the power of anonymous kindness and the importance of paying forward the help we receive. "I spent 20 years wondering who saved my life," Isabella said during the interview. "But what I learned is that the question isn't who saved me, it's what I'm going to do with the life I was given." Downey, for his part, remained characteristically humble about his role in Isabella's story. "I just wrote a check," he said. Isabella and her mother did all the hard work. They fought for her life, they appreciated the gift they were given, and they've spent the last 20 years using that gift to help other people. That's the real story here. The relationship between Isabella and Downey has continued to this day. He attended her medical school graduation, walked her down the aisle at her wedding, her father had never returned, and became an honorary uncle to her children. But perhaps most importantly, their partnership has helped establish a new model for celebrity philanthropy that emphasizes long-term relationships and sustainable impact rather than one-time donations. "Robert taught me that real generosity isn't about writing a check and walking away," Isabella reflected in a recent interview. "It's about caring enough to stay involved, to see the results of your kindness, and to keep helping however you can." Today, Dr. Isabella Rodriguez is the Director of Pediatric Cardiology at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, the same hospital where she received her life-saving surgery 30 years ago. She has helped develop treatment protocols that have saved thousands of children's lives and made heart surgery more accessible to families regardless of their economic situation. Robert Downey Jr. continues to support the Carmen Rodriguez Foundation and has expanded his charitable work to include numerous other causes focused on helping children and families in need. But he still prefers to do much of his charitable work anonymously, believing that the focus should be on helping people rather than getting credit. The story of Isabella Rodriguez and Robert Downey Jr. serves as a powerful reminder that kindness has the power to create ripple effects that last for generations. What began as one man's decision to help a stranger in need became a catalyst for medical research that has helped thousands of children around the world. "I used to think about what my life would have been like if that anonymous donor hadn't stepped forward," Isabella said. "But I've realized that's the wrong question. The right question is, what can I do to make sure no other child has to wonder if they'll get the help they need?" Sometimes the most profound acts of generosity are the ones that happen in silence, without fanfare or recognition. But sometimes, 20 years later, they come full circle in ways that remind us why kindness matters and why we should never underestimate the power of helping a stranger in need. Isabella Rodriguez got her chance to say thank you, but more importantly, she got the chance to prove that the gift she was given was worth the investment. And Robert Downey Jr. got to see the ultimate return on his generosity, not just a life saved, but a life dedicated to saving others. In the end, that might be the greatest thank you of all. Don't forget to like the videos and subscribe to the channel for more short stories.